Is that hard to do?
Bells on the well.
Stretch.
You put it in there.
You know how many jobs I've done since?
One or two.
That might be dumb.
We're live.
It was ice on the carpet.
37 years ago. I think I did come back.
We had that carpet moving special.
Regular meeting of Washington, Missouri City Council, Monday, December 2nd, 2024, 7 p.m. Fair,
Here.
Briggs, Coulter,
Here.
Heidrich,
Here.
Holtmeyer,
Here.
Patke,
Here.
Reed, Wessels.
Here.
Please rise for pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will all the council members answer if they have or have not read the meeting of the council dated meeting of the council meeting minutes for November 18th, 2024? Bear,
Yes.
Coulter,
Yes.
Heidrich,
Aye.
Holtmeyer,
Aye.
Patke,
Yes.
Wessels.
Aye.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Patke, second by Coulter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Approval and adjustment of agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Patke, second by Heidrich. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes.
Priority items, mayor's presentations, appointments and reappointments, tourism commission reappointments.
You want to do this, or you want me and you sign it?
No, it's fine. It's just the reappointment of Kurt Holfel and Tyler King for the Tourism Commission. Commission would expire December 27.
We approve.
Okay. A motion by Wessels,
Second.
second by Bear. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Public hearings, code amendment, retail minimum required off-street parking.
So, good evening, council. I am going to say I'm a little disappointed that we don't have the newspaper or any public.
They're watching
They're
at
watching.
home.
Okay, they're watching at
Don't worry
home where
about
it's
it.
warm. All right, that's fair. So we're looking at changing our code, section 400.265C, our current minimum parking requirements for just the retail use only, not for any other uses. Currently, our minimum parking is one space for each 250 square feet of floor area, and that's typically gross. We do subtract a little bit, but not a whole lot. And so you can see in this image here, we do have a fair number of shopping centers with multiple uses, different sizes, and we don't really differentiate versus, you know, public space where the people will be in the stores versus the non-public space where the employees are. And again, this aerial is showing those parking lots that are by far not maxed out. So I went to P&Z, we asked for a recommendation to reduce our minimum parking standards based off of recommendations also that are in our comprehensive plan. So they studied our C2 area. They called it general mixed use district because in the comprehensive plan, we're not just looking at retail, we're looking at more variety of uses. And they, of course, recommended that we reduce our parking requirements to allow for that kind of development in the future. I'm not going to read all this to you, but it's definitely in our comprehensive plan. I just highlighted some key pieces there. And then the recommendation that Planning and Zoning came up with is that we reduce our parking requirement to one space per gross. We decided not to differentiate between non-public and public use just because it would make it a little bit more difficult for our calculations. University City is one of those cities that does do that, so kudos to them, but we're going to go with one space per gross 350 square feet. And on the far right-hand column, you can see that we're basing an example off of 55,000 square feet retail building, which is a typical, you know, big box retail store. And we would have 158 spaces required. With our current code, it would be 220 spaces. So you can see that is quite a reduction, even though it's only 100 square feet difference in their retail use, but it is quite a difference, a huge impact on our parking lots that we currently have and what other things that we can do with that space going forward. Definitely planting. There is in the code a requirement for planting trees and green space if they're over 30 spaces, so it gives them more room to incorporate those measures that will help with stormwater. And that is where we're at with that. So do you have any questions about this recommendation?
How much does this help our MS4 standing?
It
Well-
should help us out. I would say it would help us because we've got less water that we need to go ahead and treat as a result of running out the asphalt.
Yeah, we
So-
can incorporate more green space by reducing the concrete requirement.
This is going forward, not
Correct.
amending.
No, we're not, this
No,
is,
this would.
this is an amendment.
This is an amendment to your zoning code that would take this recommendation, and then the ordinance that follows the public hearing here would go ahead and put this in place and beginning tomorrow, or tonight, or whatever you want to.
So what about existing parking lots?
They're grandfathered. I mean, they're already there. So what they could do is, in theory, if it was such a drastic change, that you may have some redevelopment of some parking lot space, just like we've witnessed some of this in the past. I mean, at one point when the old Walmart was where Penny's is located today, there was nothing whatsoever with regards to development like what we've experienced in the front closer to the highway. We've seen that. So I guess to answer your question, those developments could look at that and possibly have more commercial development. I think one of the tricks that we have with this too is that a lot of times we would require parking spaces based on a footprint of the building, and then we would have what we found over time, and I remember having this issue up 15, 20 years ago, was you'd have commercial space that would go ahead and then open up their parking lot and start selling. I mean, Ace is an example of one where they go out there and they utilize the parking spaces that your code required and then create more retail space that should generate more parking spaces, et cetera. So I think, with this, they'll be able to open that up a little bit more if they want to choose to do that. That's really up to them. Otherwise, those parking lots will remain.
Okay.
One of the things that she didn't mention that I think that's changed over time as well too is just the amount of online shopping that takes place, and you don't have near as much. And so that's another reason why a lot of these codes are being looked at again as a possibility of what is a requirement, how many do you really need? She didn't show you all the pictures she took on Sundays of empty
No.
parking lots.
I didn't show all the pictures and all the other information that I gathered for planning and zoning, but I did go shopping on Black Friday, just because the timing was perfect. Normally, I would avoid the stores. And I went to Walmart at 6 a.m., and it was like a regular day. It was like there was no line, there was no crazy parking, having to find a parking spot. Then I went again at 2 o'clock to Lowe's, and it was a little busier, but still manageable. It just goes to show that we are spending more time online shopping. The deals last, for weeks. It's not just one day only. And so even with the increased traffic that we're having the holiday season, I don't think that we're going to struggle finding places to park.
Is this a result of a potential new development that's needing this, or is
We
this something
did,
you've
we
done?
did have one that showed up on the west side of town that was looking at a space that submitted a site plan to the city, and that's when this original 220 spaces were proposed to say that they needed that. They were proposing something drastically less, and rather than send that to the Board of Adjustment and request, the question that I had at the time was, what's your hardship? I mean, because there wasn't any development on either side of them. They weren't boxed in. They could have expanded their parking lot to meet our requirement. I said, if we truly want to go ahead and change and take a good look at our parking requirements based on not just this development, but ones going forward, the online shopping, all the other stuff that we've looked at, let's go ahead and take a look at changing the code. So that's what led us to this night.
Okay.
Good evening. Two questions.
He didn't open it up to the public yet.
Oh, sorry.
I'm joking. Go ahead.
Two questions. First, I understand what the intent is. One of the things that Ray Frankenberg has mentioned a number of times is spacing of parking stalls as well as depth. Is there any changes being addressed in that as a shopper and how tight some of these spaces are in some of these lots?
No.
Yeah, we haven't looked at the code to change that. That has not come up in conversation.
And then the second question is, what enforcement is used for exactly what Darren mentioned? If you look at Baumgart's, Ace, Lowe's, a number of these places that have these minimum parking requirements, even Walmart to that matter, what is being enforced as far as the number of spaces that are required versus how much of the parking lot has been consumed by the retail? We see it in the fire lanes at a number of locations and just ingress egress issues going to these stores on our responses. So that's a question that comes to mind as well is what's being done on the back end to ensure that the spaces that are actually required, even though it's being reduced as a minimum, are they really being enforced, and how's that being handled?
Typically, I think that's what the site plan committee takes a look at it at that time. If there's somebody that's gonna go ahead and change the use, or a store changes and it demands that we go ahead and do that inspection that we're talking about, not just for inside,
I got
but it's a
another story
review,
about that later.
it's a review, now don't distract them. And then it's a review still of the committee to go ahead and make sure that the number of spaces are correct. I mean, we used to talk about it all the time, if there would be a change in the, in the footprint of the building, and especially if you've got like, what you're talking about, like where Baumgart's is and Ace, that's all run by one, I don't remember which one, who manages that.
Leasing, yeah, one big leasing company has.
Yeah,
the
one big
complex.
leasing company, and they're the ones, so we usually go back to them and say, hey, wait a second, you're not meeting this, here's what you're proposing, but this is not your parking lot. So I guess you still have to check those parking spaces when those uses come in and make sure, and so that if they're claiming they got 40 spaces that's currently being taken up by Christmas trees, well, that doesn't count.
Right, and that's the question I have in mind is if you look at, there's only a couple different lots in town, parking areas, that are being consumed that way. And if you look at a number of the shopping centers, particularly to the east, this isn't even an issue. So,
Yeah.
And one of the things that's always crossed up my mind is you have these stores that are using this exterior retail, or they're using storage in containers that are not taxed. And so how is that being addressed from a overall perspective? Yes, we're getting the sales tax on it, but the footprint of the store is not being increased to compensate for kind of workarounds the code, if you will.
And those are separate issues that, like I said, if we choose to go ahead and take those up, we can. I know that the storage containers was debated in the past several times, just for what you said, because they bring them in for short-term basis. Although I don't want to say I don't notice them as much. I do notice some of them around town. So, the one thing though that I think that one of the concerns that why you have some type of minimum parking spaces is due to the fact that you don't want necessarily the parking lot to spill over onto the public streets. Even though the public streets and have parking, that limits your ability to go ahead and get your emergency response vehicles there. But all of these cases out there along the highway, I do not recall a time when we've had cars parked on public right of way. Most of the time, the parking lots were plenty enough to go.
Black Fridays in the
Yes,
past.
in the past.
Have had problems, particularly the big box stores. And it's not just one particular retailer, or
Right.
multiple retailers that had issues with overcrowding. I was the fun sucker one Black Friday or Thanksgiving evening and threatened to close Walmart down if they didn't open up their exits, and asked them
Yeah.
their exit capacity. And so those things become problematic when you can't get people in or out.
Right. True.
So, thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks.
It's a public hearing, you gotta open the.
Yep. Any?
Go ahead.
To speak at the public
Shauna
hearing.
might have something she wants to tell you about.
Further discussion, guys, before we accept into the minutes.
Make a motion, send it on.
Second.
Motion by Holtmeyer, second by Bear, to accept in the minutes. Further. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Second reading, please, Sherry.
An ordinance amending section 400.265
yes.
point C of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri.
Hopewell.
Introduced by Holtmeyer. No more discussion.
Now second reading.
An ordinance amending section 400.265 point C of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri. Bear?
Yes.
Hopmeyer?
Aye.
Patke?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Coulter?
Yes.
Heidrich?
Aye.
By your vote, ordinance 3B passes.
Citizens' comments?
Anyone from the audience like to make a comment? Wow.
Okay.
Report of department heads, health benefits recommendation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you, you have a letter where we have asked for your approval about the recommendation SREP for Insurance has given us about our health and medical insurance renewal. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have anything since the workshop where Scott presented. We will be presenting this after your approval, if you are inclined to do so on Thursday to our employees. So you may hear questions come up, but we'll have 2 meetings to accommodate the most schedules. And we will be recording it and providing it to them via a link for those that work off schedules or long hours, so they can watch it at any time.
Questions for Sean or you guys? Okay. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Need a
Make
motion?
a motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Bear, second by Heidrich. Further comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Yay. Another great thing for our employees, you guys. Thank you, Shauna.
Ordinances and resolutions, an ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of an aviation project consultant agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Crawford, Murphy, and Tilley for professional services for the Washington Regional Airport Runway Extension Project and amend the 2024-2025 budget.
Hopewell.
Introduced by Holtmeyer.
This is the design contract for the airport runway extension project with CMT. Any questions?
Okay.
Second reading.
Second reading, Sherry.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of an aviation project consultant agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Crawford, Murphy, and Tilley for professional services for the Washington Regional Airport Runway Extension Project and amend the 2024-2025 budget. Bear?
Yes.
Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Patke?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Coulter?
Yes.
Heidrich?
Aye.
By your vote, 7A passes. B, please.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a contract agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Undersaw Construction Co. for the Jefferson and Main Street Sidewalk Project and amend the 2024-2025 budget.
Fair.
Introduced by Bear.
This is the sidewalk and curb and gutter project along Main and Jefferson with Understall Construction out of the TIF budget.
Okay. Second reading, Sherry.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a contract agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Understall Construction Co. for the Jefferson and Main Street Sidewalk Project and amend the 2024-2025 budget. Bear?
Yes.
Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Patke?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Coulter?
Yes.
Heidrich?
Aye.
By your vote, ordinance 7B passes. C, please.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a temporary construction easement agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Sarah Chairs.
Patke.
Introduced by Patke.
And this is the new temporary construction easement agreement for 1305 with the new property owner there for the Jefferson Street project.
Okay, second read.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a temporary construction easement agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Sarah Chairs. Bear?
Yes.
Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Patke?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Coulter?
Yes. Aye.
By your vote, ordinance 7C passes. D, please.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the acceptance of a quote by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Radiocom Co. for portable and mobile radio equipment and amend the 2024-2025 budget.
Patke.
Introduced by Packy.
Good evening once again. This is the ordinance for purchasing the radios on ARPA grant through the Department of Public Safety.
Further questions? Second reading.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the acceptance of a quote by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Radiocom Co. for portable and mobile radio equipment and amend the 2024-2025 budget. Bear?
Yes.
Hopmeyer?
Aye.
Patke?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Coulter?
Yes.
Heidrich?
Aye.
By your vote, ordinance 7D passes.
Thank you, and thank you to Sherry for her assistance with this ordinance.
Thanks, Tim.
Tim. Mayor's report?
I don't have much tonight, guys. Just tell you the same thing I told our department heads. It's Christmas, supposed to be the fun time of the year, happy season, but it's not that way for everybody. So if you see somebody that needs a pick-me-up or is more serious than that, please do something. Thank you.
City Administrator's report?
The only item I have for you is just to let you know, at your next meeting, we do plan on having an ordinance on there for Waste Connections for their contract. The Solid Waste Committee has reviewed the proposals that we received back in, I believe it was September. And based upon reviewing those quotes and what we had, we feel it's best interest to go ahead and enter into a contract with Waste Connections. So we will have that ordinance for you at that time. At a later date, you can determine what you want the rates to be, so that will not reflect anything with regards to rates at this time. It'll just be so that we can take advantage of the quote that we received from Waste Connections on their bid back in September. Those bids were good for 90 days, and so that'll be the last opportunity for us to go ahead and meet and get that approved for you before that. So the Solid Waste Committee will be reviewing based upon those rates. Once that hopefully gets passed, then what we can do is then the committee can come back to you with a recommendation on rates. And that can be done at a later ordinance, because the rates are still good until May of 2025, as long as our contract is in place. That's all I have.
Council comments?
I have a couple of questions. This one kind of, Chief, is kind of directed towards you also. I know you already gotten a phone call on this, so Mr. Wessels and I both got this phone call. There was a woman went to Lions Lake, went to the restroom with her two granddaughters, small granddaughters, walked into the girls' bathroom, women's bathroom, and there was a male subject in there. And he told them at the time that by law, he can be in that bathroom. What can we start, what can we start doing now so it doesn't turn into more of this? Is there anything? Is there anything we can do? And I mean, he sat there and did his business, and they walked back out. I know you can chime in too, Mark, but I was just wondering, is there anything we can start doing so we don't have this?
I called Sergeant Grissom after I got my call, and I spoke with him for a while, and I got back to the lady a couple times. But anyway, Sergeant Grissom explained that, first off, really specifically, there was not a specific ordinance that on the city code. However, he got back to me right away, and he did find an old code. It was from 1974 for the Parks Department, and in the city parks, it said that any person over the age of 4 must use the restroom designated for their sex. Now, yeah, in saying that, of course, it kind of the question of if someone claims their sex to be different than maybe the sex they were born in, and we'd have to go to our legal folks, I think, to solve any of those. However, in this particular situation, he was in agreement, and I think the lady accepted. What he told me was, he says, have her call the police. In this case, I got the idea when she described it, this was a 16-year-old acting a bit smart aleck, for this situation.
That's kinda how I took it,
Yeah,
too.
I don't think he was suggesting that he was claiming a different sex than what he appeared to be. I think he was giving her a hard time and the kids, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, at any rate, Sergeant Grissom's recommendation was that when that happened, she should call the police and they would come out there and see what they could take. And I told her that, and she seemed to accept that as, yeah, that's probably the thing.
I agree, that would be my recommendation also.
And I talked to her after you, I was out of town. I didn't get into town till late, but she was kind of okay with that, but she said by the time she came back out, he was gone to get a description. So she kind of wanted me to, I didn't know if she mentioned that to you, she just wanted me to bring it up to see if there's anything possible that we could do. So her granddaughters or nobody else's granddaughters would have to deal with this.
Well, we have that park ordinance, so it's there, but it has to be reported, in timely fashion, I guess. So what can we do, is enforce
Legally,
that,
what can we, yeah.
enforce that ordinance if it were to happen again,
I agree. My recommendation, again, would be to call if the incident occurs. It sounds like this is a one-time incident. I have heard no other complaints other than that one specific incident. So I would say if it was an ongoing issue, or if we had several reports, maybe look into something, but at this time, I don't see a need for that.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to, I didn't get to talk to anybody on your staff, but Mark did. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. I don't know if anybody else has had that.
Mark, can I add this to that? Something briefly, not like this, was talked about in the Parks Department meetings, but like have that, barcode or your scan code for, what goes on in the parks. But a sign outside the bathrooms that says, you'll be held accountable for vandalism. If anyone, to report, call this number. And we have it available. I mean, I know someone could call 911 and it's not going to be taken seriously that, hey, there's a kid in the bathroom. You know what I mean? If they call the 1050 number, the dispatch could do that. Can we put the 1050 number available, out there, visible somewhere, I guess, on our bathrooms? I don't, just a thought. And our, everywhere.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't know that number,
Right. To report vandalism, call this number.
Right.
Sure.
Because calling the next day is not going to get it done.
Can't hurt. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Yeah.
The next thing I had, a couple people, and Wayne's gone, a couple people wondering why, I know, Darren, you like that. I get a couple calls, but got some people there
Chin
asking
boogie, couple
chin
calls,
boogieing
it's all the
calls.
same.
They're wondering where the ducks are at Lions Lake, and they're thinking that we did something to get rid of the ducks. So I said, well, if the geese are still there, I don't think we can just
Turducken for Thanksgiving, and that's what happened.
They were delicious. But they wanted me to bring it forward, ask. I didn't know if there was any rhyme or reason on the ducks not being, because they enjoyed feeding the ducks so much. They were wondering why there was any rhyme or reason why they weren't there at Lions Lake anymore. I just basically told them they probably found a different area to. Yeah.
You're supposed to feed the ducks, are you?
I don't think the geese. You can feed the ducks, just not the
Not
geese.
supposed to
maybe.
feed the ducks, right?
I think they migrated.
Yeah. I know I said this years ago, and Joe and Jeff would probably remember, but I'm gonna bring it up again. It's been several years, but and I wish, well, the paper will get it if they're watching. The trail, a lot of dog poo on the trail again. I know I was on that committee years ago. Pick up your poo. Well, I guess we got to get back on that. That's an issue going on. Board appreciation, we used to have a board appreciation dinner. It was either a week or two after the employee appreciation. Do we still have something like that for them?
We do not, due to the latter couple of years. We haven't since COVID, and the few years prior to COVID, the attendance had dropped off dramatically. So we just didn't feel that that was necessary to go ahead and do that anymore. I mean, there's always different things that we can propose to show our appreciation for our volunteers that sit on our boards, but that dinner just wasn't being attended very well, so that's ever since COVID, that's the reason why.
Okay. And then,
Mark, can I just add to that? Can
Yeah,
we just
get with it.
ask, can we add those people to the
to
employee?
the employee, yeah, that's just what I was gonna say.
Is that too many in one night?
No, I mean, I think you could do that. I think I will, and I'm just gonna speak because I was at those.
I was
I was
too.
at
I
those
was,
dinners
I
years
was
ago.
too, yeah.
I think a concern after a while, and it just depends on how you gear that towards, it's really intended to be an employee appreciation party. And the problem was, in the past, I think when they combined those and they had it got catered more towards the volunteers that were on the board, and we kind of lost the whole vision of employee appreciation. So
Okay. See, and
that's-
I had never been, I wasn't at both of them when they were combined.
They were, yeah, there used to be large things out at the Elks. They were out there at the big hall, and we had several of them for a few years. And then what we started noticing was the employees quit going to it because it was, like I said, it was getting geared towards just the volunteers. So I think it was at that time that the city decided to try to separate the two and see if we could have one just for that. But like I said, due to attendance for the boards and commissions, it was just that, we'll just kind of quit that for a while.
And I probably know the answer to this, but are we still, Doug, if somebody's interested in a committee, like the half-cent sales tax committee or anything like that, they still come to you and ask?
Oh, yeah,
Talk to the mayor.
Yeah, okay, all right,
absolutely.
that's it.
On those sales tax, and I appreciate this every month that we get that
Uh-huh.
sales tax reports. The capital improvement, that one expires in 26.
Correct.
And the transportation, is that 30?
It's in 2030 is when that has the sunset, we will quit. And the reason for that was due to the length of the bonds for the city to pay off their share of the Highway 100 improvements.
Right.
So there is some discussion about that. We've talked a little bit more about, because the problem that we're going to be, that staff's been talking about, and we've talked about it internally, is with the transportation sales tax and that expiring in 2030, we have pretty much all of our transportation improvements on our 10-year budget taken up all the way to 2030. And pretty much every dime spoken for. I mean, between what we know we're going to apply for down the road. For example, I mean, Charles' staff is preparing applications for High Street and 100 for a CMAQ application for improvements to that intersection, which won't be until 3 years down the road. So the problem that we run into is that we don't have guaranteed funding source after 2030. And some of the issues that we've talked about is when could we go back and request a renewal of that tax? And so, just so you guys know, what we're looking at is that template, if you will, that we rolled out in front of the Missouri Department of Transportation Commission when they had their meeting here in October, was kind of a template for the future projects that the city would like to go ahead and see. And that included widening of Highway 100 and Highway 47. We have asked to work with a firm to go ahead and come up with some preliminary cost estimates for what it would be, just for example, specifically on 100 from like High Street out to Vosbrink Drive, as well as 47 from where it now terminates from 4 to 2 lanes or narrows down, and then going another mile beyond that. And if some of you recall that presentation that we made for the commission, it would terminate somewhere just south of where the East-West Parkway roadway would be intersected with it. So we're looking at the cost of what those, we do have a cost estimate back. We have some questions yet that we want to ask before we talk about those numbers yet, but the goal is possibly to see if there would be some discussion to go ahead and see if we could put that tax up for renewal the same time that we have the capital improvement sales tax in 2026.
Put them both up at the same time?
Put them both up at the same time for renewal. Well, the idea is, we don't feel like we're going to have our homework done And like I said, we've got to come up with what's the amount that we would need to raise. We know what the tax generates. It generates about 2.8 million. If you want to see those projects, as well as, everyone should realize, Charles has to include in his budget our local streets and how we have those maintained. And that was a selling, I think, to the general public back when this was passed in 2005. If you want to continue to see your streets maintained the way they are, that's the revenue source that we have. If we have to rely upon the general fund, you're going to have to be picking and choosing streets a lot, and maintenance is going to fall by the wayside.
See, I had thought that, okay, with the capital improvement, and that expires in '26, so I had thought maybe '25 would be when we campaign to get that passed.
We're not ready.
For the capital improvement?
Correct.
Yeah, the capital
Not
improvement,
25.
well, let me, the committee would typically start to meet in the beginning of the summer prior to presenting it to council, because you as a council have to vote to go ahead and put the capital improvement sales tax, for example, if you want to put that back to be renewed. Now, historically, that's always been done because you got a committee sitting there saying, here's X number of dollars worth of projects that we feel are worthwhile. So the committee makes that, starts going through that process in the summer, comes up with a recommendation in the early part of fall, presents that to the council. You as a council can then vote to go ahead and put the renewal on the tax ballot, and then we wait until April
On an
for the
April
voters.
ballot.
On an April ballot.
So it would come out in '26.
Correct.
Okay, and so what you're saying is you need a 3-year head start on the transportation because of the way these grants go.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so,
But that's just, like I said, the bigger issue is what improvements would you want to see if you renewed the tax, if you want? Because I will say, if you don't renew the tax, like I said, you could not fund, we don't have the capability to go ahead and leverage, for example, the local match like we would need, like what Charles is talking about for High Street and 100 for those signal improvements.
I'm just looking for a little time because I think that's gonna be asking a lot from the public. I mean, those are large.
It's no additional. It's exactly what we're doing right now.
I understand that, yeah, but we've seen some of those things go down flames too with that argument. So, I mean, and to ask for the two of them, like I said, that close together. And I'm not sure what the answer is to how to get a little bit of time between the two, but
You could, I mean, the other thing is you could put it on a different ballot other than April. I would caution you against that because you gotta, I think we've had a better, it's a local tax. And so I feel that the locals, that's when you have your municipal elections are always in April. So I would encourage you to keep it on that. And so then your next choice, if you want to follow that advice, is to do it in April of 2027.
would the April of
Or
28
April-
be absolutely too late?
No, you might have you might have to go ahead and wait a year or two on a couple of federal projects we might not be able to submit. So those are all the issues that we've talked about internally about what we're up against.
All right.
So I think there's some homework that needs to be done more, though, before we really get into saying that that's going to be, there's no definitive thing. Obviously, who's ever on the council at that time in December of next year this time, we'll have to go ahead and make that decision. And it's all going to have to be based upon the evidence that's brought to you, the projects that need to be brought to you, and saying, do you want to bring this before the public to go ahead and have this tax renewed for these projects, as well as maintenance of your local street network?
So at some point, and I don't remember the date, but you used to have, if they repaved in front of your house,
Yes.
you paid a third of that.
There was different, it depended upon what the type of surface that we had. So prior to 2005, the city did, I think for a number of years, I want to say at least 5, I could go back and check our records, but we used chip and seal. And we did not assess anybody based upon linear feet of your frontage of your lot.
But-
Mark remembers
but-
the days when we did back, this is way before my time.
So now, though, the transportation sales tax has covered the cost of if you get a new street put in front of your house.
There is no assessment, there's no discussion of that. As a matter of fact, let me take it a step further. every project where we've had even a sidewalk, we did away with the sidewalk program that was there because of
But
the
is,
fact.
that's a result of that tax.
Absolutely.
So if you don't pass that tax, you're back to paying for your sidewalks, your new streets out of your own pocket versus the half cent that.
Or drop drop the type of product that you're getting on
Right.
your streets.
Nobody liked chip and seal.
I don't remember a
Doesn't
single
last
person
anyway.
calling up saying
Type
that
of
they liked
product
it.
and time of product,
Yeah.
of renewal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a worthy thing to renew.
It's, I mean, I think if the general public was, you know, if our citizens want to continue to go ahead and see the level of maintenance that they've gotten used to on our streets. And again, I think our staff does an incredible job of taking advantage of every federal tax dollar and bringing it back to the community so that that's not being assessed at a local level. Now, Second Street, for example, when we did that, we paid for all of that, but that's due to the fact that it doesn't qualify as a federal funded street. And there's only so many. You've got to submit those every couple of years. East-West Gateway will reevaluate those types of streets. But we try to go ahead and my concern is you're not even going to have the leverage then to go ahead and apply for those types of projects.
Yeah,
But the transportation
Needs to
sales
be-
tax still paid for Second Street.
Yes, it did. Yes, absolutely. But it was all funded through your local transportation sales tax. There was no federal grant involved.
100%, not 10%.
That's right. It was 100%.
right, yeah.
guys,
We're getting stuff for pennies on the dollar right now.
That's the goal, Mike. I don't know, you guys, we've got a good, I would say an excellent track record of delivering on what we promised our voters, both in the capital improvement sales tax and the transportation sale tax. Look around town, there's all of these examples of stuff that wouldn't have happened had that tax not been passed.
No they're godsends, and
Well, and
there's
I
no
think-
question we need them again.
Yep.
My only question there was,
Just timing?
yeah, timing wise.
I don't.
It scares me as I got to looking at those expiration dates, that just what Darren's saying, they're gonna be bunched together. We're gonna have to go to the public twice. You know, and that's my only concern, is there some way we can get a little gap in there? I don't know.
I understand, Mark, but, you know, if you get a committee together to run that issue, that's a lot of effort and a lot of momentum that's hard to regenerate a year or so later. Because truthfully, you guys, the same people that we're gonna have run the capital improvement sales tax, a lot of those folks will be running the transportation sales tax. And that's a lot to ask of our, I don't wanna say our best, but our most involved citizens. And I feel strongly that given that we have a tremendous track record of delivering what we promised, and the fact that if we show them what we're gonna do with these funds, they'll respond.
Can we send out, when it gets closer for our campaign thing, in our bills, what would you like to see the city do with capital sales tax?
What you can do is you
Something
can
like
show
that.
them the track record of projects that you did over the last 8 years, or with the transportation sales tax. What you can say, this is what we've done over the last 20 years. Because keep in mind, that tax was started in 2005.
Yeah.
So, yes, by all means, we can show our track record of this is what we did. You know, it was interesting when we had the MoDOT commission here in October, and the discussion was, you know, it's like, what if the city wouldn't have done the cost share? And when would Highway 100 would have been considered to go ahead and go to 4 lanes? And it was somewhere around like this time.
It's 2025.
Yeah, 2025 would have been when the city would have had, you know, can you imagine this city, what it would be if we would have had to wait to have 4 lanes from I-44 to here? I don't want to think about that.
Because that was 2009, wasn't it?
2005.
No,
Is
when the
the
4
tax
lanes.
was passed.
No, when the
Oh,
4
and the
lanes.
4 lanes, 2010, when the big stretch
Yeah,
when the longest stretch of
It
it.
was
The first
2009.
phase was in front of Phoenix Center.
Yeah,
That was the first phase. And then the third phase was from, picking up from 47 and going west to I Street. So I think, you know, like I said, long story short, we still have more homework to do. and we're looking at just what those estimates are going to be, and then what we're gonna need for future improvements with transportation. And then you can have a committee that sits there and looks at it and says, okay, if you do want these, and we do wanna present these to the voters, what's the term? How long do you want that? And we also have some meetings that we're probably gonna have to go ahead and have with MoDOT. That's why it was a good thing to have a positive interaction with them in this past October, because they know that we're a community that's willing to go ahead and fund those projects, or partner with them. And so I think it was important for us to go ahead and let them know that these are gonna be our future requests, and it's time for us then to go to them and say, how much of this can they fund? Typically, it's been a 50-50 cost share, depending upon the project. Most of them have been 50-50. And then so take that estimate, take how long it's gonna pay that off, how much are you bringing in, or what's your estimate of what you're bringing in on the tax? You guys see these, you brought this up, it's 2.8 million is basically what you're receiving for a half-cent sales tax. So,
Maybe we can get some more kids to bring in wheelbarrows of pennies in that.
You know, that gained a lot of votes, Mark.
It was like it was yesterday, but it was a couple years ago.
that's been a few years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good discussion, guys.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. I will second that motion.
Motion by Bear, second by Coulter to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All at once. Is it tomorrow your day? Look at this one. Next one. Those tomorrow.
1%, so you're asking probably for a 1%.
No, it's just a renewal. People would see no difference.
If you wanna do that, yeah.
We can't emphasize that. I
Two
understand.
halves.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Let's do halves.
And you have to emphasize that.
I said, have a great evening, Mr.